of all of the themes, I'm pretty sure we can agree that LEGO Marvel sets are typically kind of lacking when it comes to the build, and the highlights usually are the minifigures. Now, I'm a huge minifigure fan. I love them. However, I feel like these guys in particular could do with just a tiny few tweaks here and there in order to upgrade them and just make them even better. Just give them more detail, more love, and more care. In front of you are 9 different minifigures from a range of different Marvel movies who, just like Wolverine, we are going to regenerate and give some new life today with a ton of new detail. And a lot of these fixes are really simple things. Not many of them require expensive parts. Like, these are all pretty basic things that you can do just to make your minifigures look just that tiny bit more accurate. These are personally things that I do with a lot of my minifigures before I put them on display because I want them to be the absolute best they can be. So let's get into it. Starting off, we have Black Widow in her Quantum Realm suit. Now, in general, just these Quantum Realm suits really weren't all that accurate, and I mean, a lot of that at the end of the day comes down to spoilers, but with Black Widow in particular, I don't know why they messed up the hair so badly, considering it was literally on the box art that she did have a braid that in fact was two-toned. You had the blonde at the end from where her dye had grown out, and then you had her original orange roots here, and overall, I'm sure a lot of people can agree that there was one hairpiece in particular from a certain popular Disney princess that would have just worked perfectly as a recolor. So unfortunately for Black Widow, you can't really upgrade her all too well since this piece still has not been recolored. However, I wanted to show you what it could have looked like if LEGO did in fact recolor it. Now, as much as I would have loved for them to be able to do the two-tone with the blonde and with the ginger, I feel like it would have worked perfectly, especially considering this piece was blonde to begin with. I feel like it's a much more realistic if we just recolor the entire thing into that sort of dark orange ginger color. I feel like this is probably the route LEGO would have gone if they did decide to reuse this piece. I genuinely don't understand why they didn't. I think it is absolutely perfect. Like, unless it is something to do with the licensing of Disney, I mean, this piece would have been the absolute best, and I really kind of want to get a second one so that I can try and like at least paint it or something in order to make it just a bit more accurate, because I feel like Black Widow being like the first female Avenger, you know, she really did deserve it. And unfortunately, I just don't think that they served her justice, so hopefully this image here can show us what we would have gotten, and I guess the care that Black Widow did in fact deserve as a minifigure. Next up is one very expensive figure being Mr. James Buchanan Barnes, aka Bucky, aka, at least in this case, the White Wolf. Now, this minifigure was an exclusive to the 2018 Bricktober pack, and overall this is a really great figure. I love the torso printing on the arm as well. It's just amazing. Like, look at the detail on him. He's got dual molded legs. What more could you really ask for with a minifigure? And to that I say, this hairpiece. Now, admittedly, this hairpiece did not exist at the time, so I'm not surprised that LEGO just kept with the Prince of Persia hair. However, later in 2019, Sirius Black came along and gave us this dark brown recoloring, and I personally feel like this sort of mullet piece works a lot better for Bucky, at least in Infinity War and Endgame. His hair looks a bit more rough. I mean, in the movie as well, it was a lot longer. Personally, I think this piece is so much more accurate, and I imagine as well if they redid this type of minifigure these days, you probably would have this hairpiece instead of the good old Prince of Persia piece. Luckily, this piece is pretty common. Sirius Black has been in several books and several sets now. This definitely isn't going to be a very expensive upgrade to do, but considering, you know, how expensive the figure is in general, I feel like it is worth going that extra step and getting an extra one of these hair pieces to put on him just to make him look even more accurate and practically perfect, I think. You could even go as far as well to getting an additional Bucky from the Marvel CMF if you wanted to have like an alternate face for him. However, I think this angry one at least does work in sort of the Infinity War and Endgame setting. Even with its alternate face, I feel like you are still getting Bucky as a character coming across really well. Moving along, and we have the latest addition to the MCU, and that is America Chavez. Now, overall, I think this minifigure is fantastic. I love her torso. I think it looks spectacular. The printing on it, her face as well, is such a welcome addition. The one thing, however, that I'm not a huge fan of, especially after seeing the movie, is the hairpiece. And I know I'm not the first one to even point this out either. I'm pretty sure I saw this on my subreddit a while ago or on Instagram. It has definitely been floating around there, but people have actually been using the Hermione Granger hair on her, which personally I think is so much more accurate. I mean, in the movie as well, America did have her hair up in a ponytail, and I feel like you could even get away with using like the typical ponytail piece in dark brown if you really wanted to. However, her hair was out more during the movie, which is why at least I think this hairpiece worked with the set, even though funnily enough her hair was tied up in the scene this set is based on. But I did want to show to you today, again with the help of Photoshop, what this hairpiece from the Harry Potter sets on Hermione Granger would look like in dark brown. If you really wanted to, I mean, you could just put the reddish brown version on her, but I think it just looks far too light with her skin tone to look good. However, the dark brown version looks really, really good to me. Again, I don't know why LEGO hasn't recolored this hairpiece. In fact, we've only had it recolored once in the bright yellow. I feel like this piece in dark brown for America Chavez, but also dark orange for characters like Molly Weasley would be perfect. This hairpiece is amazing. It has a lot of versatility. I really hope that one day LEGO will start using it to its full potential and actually start recoloring it and really putting it to use. Next up is Ant-Man, and overall I do really enjoy this Ant-Man minifigure and everything about him. However, after seeing a particular sort of combination done by the user Maxifigures on Instagram for their 3D giant printed Ant-Man, which I did in fact buy and is a fantastic purchase, and I would highly recommend a 3D printed Iron Man to any LEGO fan. But that's besides the point. Maxifigures took this version of Ant-Man and combined it with the helmet of the version of the Quantum Realm Suit one, which is definitely one I predict that LEGO will probably use in the future, and they combined it in order to make their 3D figure. Now, upon having that figure, I thought it was fantastic and a combination that I really wanted to do. Firstly though, I did have to pick up this Iron Man figure, and then after that, I had to get my hands on the other one, which was a pretty expensive task, and even just buying this helmet on its own, look, it's not the cheapest thing ever. However, I definitely think it makes for the perfect Ant-Man suit. So not only does this now match my 3D figure, but to me, it definitely looks a little more accurate. I don't know what it is. That mouthpiece on just the Quantum Realm suit to me really didn't look that good. I mean, the one on the Endgame figure to me looks so much better. It's definitely a lot cleaner. You do miss, I guess, a lot of that sort of 3D factor that you got with the original helmet on that minifigure. However, to me at least, this actually looks like Paul Rudd as Ant-Man, and I am a huge fan of just this simple switch over. Then if you really wanted to as well, you can put the old helmet on the newer figure and just call it a day. Next up is Wolverine, and this is a figure that I have had on my list of things to upgrade since the second I saw him revealed. Firstly, I'm just incredibly glad that we have this minifigure. I've wanted him for so long, and I've finally got the Wolverine mech. I've finally got the figure. It is fantastic. And I love as well that LEGO did in fact bring back the Wolverine helmet. However, I found it really interesting that they didn't include his hairpiece, especially since T'Challa in this same line of mechs had both his mask as well as an alternate head with his hairpiece. So upon seeing the Wolverine mech and the Wolverine figure for the first time, the first thing I did was run out and buy that good old Wolverine hair, which is the same hair as well as the 2006 Joker minifigure, so that I could put it on him and have a version where I can alternate between both the helmet and the hair. I mean, at the end of the day, you could probably just stop here. This figure still looks good as it is. However, I feel like he could do with just a little more customization and a little more detail. So I went out and I bought this dark blue shoulder piece in order to sort of really cement that comic book look that he's got. He's got some very prominent like 80s shoulder pad style shoulders that I really wanted to get across, and especially because the piece does exist, it was pretty easy. And it also matches the same dark blue that is featured on the torso. Not the one that quite matches with his hands, but it definitely blends in with the figure and really just makes him, I guess, just a tiny bit more detailed and a little bit closer to his comic book era. And you could certainly just leave your Wolverine figure here. However, again, I did want to take it one step further, as Wolverine has some pretty prominent boots. However, to my knowledge and at least my research, I couldn't find some that had the same yellow and then the same blue that you'd need. So instead, I looked over to the LEGO Batman movie CMF series, and I found these good old brown and yellow boots. Now, you could just swap it out as so and just completely change out the legs. However, I find that the brown hip piece really doesn't look too crash hot. I mean, it's fine and it's good. It's definitely still an upgrade. However, I mean, I would personally just like take the legs off and put them on the white hip piece, or take one of your probably multiple duplicates of various Spider-Man figures and steal his hip joint. Look, if LEGO's gonna give us so many Spider-Man figures, they might as well come in use for something. So there's Wolverine with the blue hip piece. Now this blue does match the one of his wrists, and in an ideal world these boots would be blue instead of brown. However, I still feel like this is a pretty solid upgrade. You could keep it like this if you want. I mean, I feel like it's technically a bit closer to comic book. However, just to make the minifigure look a bit cleaner, personally, I'm gonna stick the brown boots on the yellow hip piece that came with Wolverine, just so that the entire thing sort of blends in, since the boots are technically an inaccurate color. So there, after swapping out the leg pieces, you can see again that it is just a tiny bit cleaner, even though technically it's not as accurate. However, in cases like this, I would much rather the minifigure look a bit more cohesive than it be accurate, but at the end of the day, again, it is up to you. This is personally how I'm going to be displaying my Wolverine minifigure. I mean, again, I can also swap it out with the helmet if I really want to, just to mix things up and overall just have a much more accurate Logan and Wolverine, and I'm just really glad to have him, to be completely honest. Next up on the agenda is the disappointing rendition of the minifigure of Pepper Potts. Now, firstly, there are a couple things I don't like about the Pepper Potts figure. Firstly is her face. I don't know, she just looks a tiny bit too young. The fact that her eyebrows are brown with the ginger hair kind of annoys me, but I'm not even going to focus on that today. To me, I just feel like Pepper's suit really doesn't look that good. A lot of the time she was walking around in dresses and pencil skirts, so that is the first thing I want to change is her legs. So I'm going to go and steal my good old Age of Ultron Wanda Maximoff, who had this beautiful black skirt piece with her. Then I'm just going to swap these two out in order to give Pepper, I guess, more of a sort of suit style. Now, admittedly, Wanda's skirt has like a bunch of pleats and creases in it. However, I think it definitely makes Pepper look more like Pepper when it came to her outfits. So for that reason, I quite enjoy it. Now, the next thing that I did want to swap out is her hair. This ponytail, to me, I don't know, it doesn't quite scream Pepper. There aren't too many hair pieces, though, that I personally do feel like scream out Pepper. However, I feel like I want to take a page out of the 2000 and like whatever it was, 13 Iron Man 3 sets and steal this longer ginger hair piece and put that on her instead. It's the same one that was used in that Malibu Mansion set. I mean, again, with the face, I don't think it quite matches his. In an ideal world, you could get that Pepper Potts face and switch it out, because I feel like she just looks far too young with this face, but I definitely think the hair and the legs are a big improvement. I'm just waiting for a face now that I feel like matches this version of Pepper Potts just a bit better. If anyone does have any suggestions for an alternate face that does look a tiny bit older, please let me know in the comments down below, because I would love to find one and finally be able to swap it out and have Pepper look like Pepper. Next up is everyone's least favourite Eternal after that major plot twist, Icarus. Now, when this figure came out, I mean, quite a lot of people and myself were like, what on earth is this hair colour? Especially because you look at the box and it has the photo of Richard Madden with considerably darker hair. I don't even know where this like option came from. Even just watching the movie, there was not a second where his hair looked this bright. And ideally as well, the face probably should have a little bit of facial hair, a little bit of stubble, but I really feel like the facial structure does look like Richard Madden, so I'm not going to swap it out this time, but I'm definitely changing that hair piece. Now, there are two options, I feel like. One definitely more accurate than the other. The first is going to be Doctor Strange's hair piece, as Richard Madden does have like a streak, I guess, of like lighter hair on his head. Maybe that's where the original hairpiece color came from. However, I feel like the black is far too dark, and he definitely didn't have that much sort of lighter gray hair, so I'm just going to go and stick with the good old dark brown tousled hair that I feel like everyone uses for their sig figs, which luckily came on Bucky Barnes in the Marvel CMF. I mean, it's a pretty common hairpiece in general. It's not that expensive, not that hard to get a hold of, but I'm gonna swap it out, and not only do I feel like the eyebrows match just a tiny bit better now, but he actually looks like the actor and the character. I mean, again, this was such a simple thing and probably should have been done in the sets in general, but luckily it's a very simple, cheap, and easy switch that we can do ourselves. Next up is a lot of people's favourite character and definitely my favourite Avenger, and also kind of spoilers but not spoilers, my favourite Marvel villain, and that is Wanda Maximoff, aka the Scarlet Witch. Now, I'm not going to be making this into a Multiverse of Madness Wanda. There are a few tutorials out there, but personally, I just wanted to show you guys something that I saw on my subreddit, and that is to actually swap out Wanda's cape and make it look a little bit more accurate. I remember when I saw this minifigure for the first time, the cape just looked kind of off to me. I feel like Wanda never had a huge cape. It was sort of just like attached to her shoulders. It was a lot skinnier, a lot less prominent, feminine, and I feel like her coattails were more of that. So what we're going to do is we're going to steal Jafar from the Disney CMF, because if you haven't noticed, he's got this quite handy dandy cape here. I also feel like the black blends in with Wanda pretty nicely, so we're just going to take that off of him and ruin his chances of ever becoming Sultan in order to give our favorite Avenger a much more accurate looking cloak. Now, Jafar's cape is two-toned. Personally, I'm going to keep the black on the inside and have the red on the outside. I feel like it's just a tiny bit more accurate to me. And when you slot the head on as well, you can see that it doesn't really sort of like choke up around her neck as much as the actual cape did. You can also tell that the colors are slightly off. Jafar's is much more of, I guess, a vibrant red, whereas Wanda's actual cape is more of a dark red. But to me, this cape just looks so much better. Firstly, the black ties in with her outfit. I mean, ideally, it should be red on both sides, I feel like. However, it's not as prominent around her neckline and her shoulders, which is why I really fell in love with this modification. I was so glad that I was able to see it, and now I want to share it with you because I just feel like it looks so much better. Also, I'm very tempted at this point to go get a Sharpie and like detail in her crown. However, I'm too scared. I'm not going to do it, but also that is an option if you want to upgrade Wanda even further. And our last minifigure that we're gonna wait, hold on a second, where is Gamora?
Why is Gamora?
Okay, found her, we're all good. So lastly, we are going to upgrade Gamora, and this one again isn't too much of a priority and definitely is something that I feel like LEGO did perfectly at the time. However, since this set has came out, and specifically, I guess, Gamora's in general, there has been a much better looking hairpiece that was introduced in the Marvel CMF with the Thanos as Gamora. Now, personally, I feel like you don't really need to swap out this hair. However, I had a couple of spares lying around, so I really wanted to swap it out, considering I think the pink is so much more prominent on the newer version than the older version. In the older version, you didn't really get a sense that her hair, I guess, was like two-tone dyed. However, this newer one really accentuates that. The fact as well that you've got a mix of light pink and the dark pink makes it look so much better and has a lot more depth and dimension. Again, this really isn't essential and really didn't add too much to the figure, but it's something that I personally did just in order to get that extra detail and make her look even better. You could also then use the alternate Gamora's head in order to give her some more facial expressions if you really wanted to. Again, definitely not very high up on the priority list, but I would definitely consider it. And I actually need to get one more of these hair pieces so that I can swap out every single one of my Gamora minifigures to be like this. So there are all of the minifigure upgrades that I've got for these guys today. Sadly for us, some of them definitely cannot be done in real life. However, the ones that we can do, I feel like do make, at least in some cases, a very slight difference. Some of them make a major difference, and I really just overall love how these guys turned out and cannot wait to put them back on my display in their current forms. Again, let me know if you have any suggestions for a Pepper Potts face. I've been searching for a while. I really don't want to use, ideally, sort of like the Helga Hufflepuff Molly Weasley one. So if you have any ideas outside of that face, please let me know in the comments down below as well. And if you have any other suggestions for minifigure upgrades, let me know in the comments. And if you guys enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up, consider subscribing to my channel down below, and be sure to check out all of my other minifigure upgrade videos on the end slide now.